What's going on, guys? Welcome to the David F Haas Podcast. We're doing our first podcast over Zoom, which I know I'm behind the times technology-wise here, but my good buddy John reached out to me. He lives in LA, and he said, "Hey, I'd love to be a podcast guest." So I took that as a cue to learn how to record a podcast on Zoom. So here we are. John is originally from Windsor, Amherstburg, I believe, and now lives in LA. He's a real estate agent. He's a musician. He's known as Cosmic John, Mystic Emergence. He has many names. But John has a really interesting story. He's been able to really excel in a lot of areas in his life. And I think that what he has to offer here today is going to be very helpful for anyone that's looking to make like real changes in their life and looking to take leaps that some people aren't willing to take. So John, thanks for coming on the podcast. Great connecting again.
Thanks for having me. And I used to work at the Treehouse. It was a really awesome experience. That's how I got to know Dave. So
yeah, right on, man. Back in the Treehouse days, John was working my front door. When I used to stand outside for probably about 15 years of owning Treehouse. I stood outside and just promoted to people and said, like, "Hey, come in Treehouse, come inside." And John was out there right with me, and we had a great time. I used to love that position because I used to have so many great conversations with like the door staff. Always, like some of my closest employees, I say, would be like the front doorman and I, because we would have like these long, in-depth conversations. You're standing outside for 4 hours, it's like, of course you're just going to end up talking about life. And John and I had some really in-depth conversations. But then he decided to move on to greener pastures and head out to LA. And he still has some roots here in Windsor. But the big thing I think, John, that really I think separates you from the herd a little bit is your willingness to do what other people don't do, and also the connection to like having a powerful message. And you've been making positively influenced music. I don't know what you have a better name for it than that. You can say that after this. Before, like, spirituality was cool, kind of thing, and that kind of stuff. So, what kind of led you on that path? How has your music been inspired by it? What is it you're currently doing? Just kind of give us a little rundown of all of that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I grew up in Amherstburg and then later moved to Windsor. But right out of high school, I kind of had this spiritual awakening. I was reading the book Siddhartha, and it was talking about enlightenment. And then I read the Celestine prophecy, which talks about synchronicities. And it was like this whole world opened up to me. And I just got totally enthralled by it. And then I got a job as a security guard, which gave me ample time to have all the spare time to read. So I started reading all these spiritual books and got into, discovered yoga and meditation. And my sister, Carolyn, is really involved in that world. So we were like a tandem kind of navigating these, newly discovered oceans together. It wasn't too much later, like in my 20s, we went to India for almost 3 months, and I was always into music, and I was always inclined to do poetry, kind of like a rap style. And it's like when I first started rapping before kind of the spiritual awakening, it was sort of generic, I'm better than you type rap, or I'm cool. And then when I had this awakening, I felt this intuition kind of expand, where it was a channeled message, essentially, where it's like I had something to say that was unique, and it felt very special and intrinsic to like a spiritual connection. So that was facilitated by my India experience, and it kind of just grew. Like we went to my sister and I went to Egypt and saw the pyramids and had these really cool experiences there. So it was always, I felt like I had this message to bring forth. And during that period, I went to music school, and there's so much to fit in. I graduated from the University of Windsor with a criminal justice degree, and I was going to pursue law school, but then I had this calling to do music. So then I did music school. And so I learned how to play the guitar and the bass and the drums and learn music theory. So I learned how to write music. And then, the the inspired poetry I was coming up with were like kind of transmitted through writing rap lyrics. And another interesting thing too, I always had a fascination simultaneously, like growing up with like living in the States. Like it was just, for some reason it called to me, like it felt like enriched with like a lot of life experience where it was like fast paced, and it seems like that's where the scene was. Like that's arguable because obviously Canada has scenes too, and Europe, everywhere else. But you know, I'd be walking and I see Detroit and I'm like, I really want to live in Detroit. For some, it's so funny living in LA now. Like people think of Detroit and they're like, oh, Detroit. Like even though I thought Detroit was amazing. But yeah, I ended up moving here like 9 years ago. And I kind of, you know, music has always been a part of me where I've been creating, and I've written since then 4 albums, and I wrote a sci-fi book because I'm big into writing and big into science fiction, like aliens and government conspiracies and spiritual cults. So like all my knowledge that I've gained in my experience through you know, meditating and going to different spiritual circles and gatherings, like it's all just kind of influxed into my music, which I'm still releasing. So that's kind of the up-to-date picture.
Yeah, I love that, man. You know, so much to unpack there, but the one thing is I want to say is that after we finish the podcast, I have to give you, I have this idea for a sci-fi movie that I've had for years, and maybe you're the guy to write the script for me, you know, like we can team up, because it's like literally everyone would see this movie. So it's really that good. And you're in LA, so it's like you're in the right place to pitch the script. So maybe you're my guy.
I'll do it, man.
All right, love it. Wait till you hear it. I'm excited. It's like, I'm not going to say it on the podcast because I don't want to put it out into the universe. I don't want anyone picking up on it, you know. So, yeah, okay. So let's talk about the music mainly for a minute, because you know, like one thing I see, like, you know, I follow you on Instagram and stuff, and it's like I see John. He's like freaking, he's jacked and he's ripped and he got into amazing shape, you know. See John, he's playing guitar and like doing these crazy things. He's rapping in videos. And then you're also like this like a really great basketball player, right? So it's like you're able to excel in things, I would say, you know, really quickly in life, or not quickly, but you're able to get to, like, I'd say, high levels of performance in your life. What do you think it is that you have that allows you to do that?
Well, thanks for the compliments. I think I just have like a really dogged determination when I pursue a goal. And what I'm learning now is to really catapult a goal as an idea to manifestation is to like solidify it through consistent effort towards it. Because, you know, as people who are highly creative, you know, that are out there, they have a lot of ideas, and to like actually execute it, it's like what I'm learning now after many, many years is to like really just prioritize 1 or 2 goals. Like say that idea you have for that movie, you know, it's like there has to be a time where you have to divert a lot of space and energy to like get that, you know, along the steps of progression from an idea to writing it to like scene development. You know, then you have to pitch it. And, you know, it's a big process to everything. And it's like a huge, you know, it's reward when you actually complete it. It's just, it's intense.
Yeah, no, but I think you hit the nail on the head there, John. It's like, this is what so many people don't realize is that ideas are a dime a dozen. They literally are. Like, you know, I could probably come up with $10 million in 10 minutes. Literally I could, right? But try and execute those ideas, and that's when like the, what's the saying, something, the something meets the pavement, or I don't know what it is, but I don't know what the thing is, but you know what I mean? Like it's like when you really get executing, there's like these process of starting a business, or not even a business, achieving any goal. Is like in the beginning, there's like all this excitement. It's like, oh my God, I can't wait. I'm going to write a book and I'm so excited. And then all of a sudden it's like, you have all of this bullshit that you have to deal with in the interim. And that is where the true executors are really shine, you know. And like, you know, let's use an example of like the guys that wanted to start Facebook, right? What were the Winklevoss, right? So those guys, to their credit, they've created a $1 billion business now with Bitcoin and whatever. So they've done well, and maybe they did have the ability to execute because they've shown that they can execute with that. But the thing that Mark Zuckerberg was able to do was he was able to execute like at a crazy level. Like he was putting in 12-hour days to like writing code to make Facebook. And that's what is, what is so important is learning how to execute and to face the challenges and move through them, right? It's like you're going to face so many challenges on the road to achieving some level of success. And I think so many people get stuck in this place of, I'm excited, I'm going to do it. They do it for a little bit. They reach some level of success maybe, or not even fully. And then they kind of like just fall off and they don't see it to completion. They don't push right to the very end. And, I think that's something that you've been able to do, multiple times. You were able to, create albums. You're able to write a book. You're able to get in like amazing shape, right? So it's like you definitely have that execution ability. And I think you hit the nail on the head that it's all about focus. And one of my favorite quotes is Confucius says that the person who chases two rabbits catches neither, right? So now, does this mean that you need to focus solely on one thing to execute it? I don't know. Like, this is the one thing that I struggle with myself, because I have a bunch of ideas and I would love to see them all come to fruition, but I don't think it's possible. Like from what I've seen, it's like you have to be focused on one or two major things. And when I say one or two major things, it's like your health, your relationships, and whatever else you're doing, right? Now, could you spread that out to 5 different things? Maybe. It might just take you 5 times as long though. Like that's the kind of way I feel. Like, what are your thoughts on executing on multiple different things? Because you're kind of doing that. You're writing books, you're making music, you're doing real estate. So what are your thoughts on that?
So a lot of meditation in the morning and a lot of coffee.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. What I'm trying to like master, which is hard for me because like I was, diagnosed with ADD, when I was younger, is just like, because I'm very not scattered, but divergent in passions, it's because it's like, like you said, I grew up playing basketball and I write and I do this and I'm like, ooh, I should try this out. Like I find if I have core stability when I try to wake up early because I'm hyper productive in the morning. So like I try to get up at 5 and I have a meditation practice, which kind of grounds me and brings clarity. And then I get insights. Little things like trying to exercise and eat healthier. It creates like a core foundation so I could then use my time wisely. But yeah, I've when you do too much, it gets overwhelming. It's so much easier to do when you dedicate an entire day to like a goal, where it's like, I'm going to get this song done. And then you just time block you get so much done, but it's like, inevitably life gets in the way. And then, it's like, with like a relationship or friendship, it's like, come do this. And then, your job. And then all of a sudden that project that you were burning with inspiration months ago is just dissipate in the shadows. And then you have to like breathe life into it again and then create new like time energy for it. And it's, that's why it's good to stay consistent and just see it till it's done. It's just like, you got to kind of just tough it out.
Yeah, definitely. And I've really been tuning into this myself lately. It's funny that you and I are jumping on this podcast talking about this right now, because this is, something that I've experienced over the course of my life. Is lots of energy in the beginning, roadblocks happen and the energy goes away. Then I kind of like get a little bit of fire and try and bring some life back into it. But ultimately, usually the project ends up dying off if it doesn't have my full time and attention, right? So what I've been working on recently is installing the idea of like micro habits. There's a book out there called Atomic Habits. And basically what he means by atomic, he means micro. He's like tiny little habits. And this is a saying that I live by, is like, success is simple. It's a matter of doing small, daily, consistent tasks, right? So, but what happens is we get excited and we want to do too much, right? And we end up using kind of all of our energy, and we don't ever develop the habit of being consistent at anything, right? And so for me, I'm actually writing a book right now myself, and it's like I don't even know what the hell it is. I thought it was a children's book, but then I started killing animals, and I'm like, this isn't a children's book anymore. So it's I think it's going to be like a coffee table book kind of. But what I did with that book, and what I've tried to write books before, and I've had the same problem where I would get energy and then I would lose it. I would get energy and I would lose it. And then when it comes to writing a book, the problem is if you don't stay consistent, what you wrote ends up losing its value because you start learning more new information, right? So, from the level of consciousness I was writing my first book from, if I went to revisit that book now, all that information would be completely irrelevant, right? Maybe not all of it, but it would most likely be irrelevant. So that's why I've developed this habit of installing micro habits, which for me, writing my current book, I just set aside 5 minutes a day where I have to write, right? And so I'm not so much caring about whether I do, more than 5 minutes. I'm like 5 minutes is the minimum I can do, but most of the time I end up going longer. But for me, it's just being consistent, right? It's just like 5 minutes. Anyone can do anything for 5 minutes. I have this thing in my letting go school that I call the 5-minute rule, and really, the 5-minute rule is about establishing the habit. And after you've done it for 66 days, 40 days, whatever it may be, and it becomes automatic, then if you want, you could say, okay, maybe I'm going to bump this to 20 minutes a day or whatever it may be. But the key, I think, here, and probably something that you and I didn't really do in the beginning, we kind of just used our desire and drive to push forward and get things done. But the key is to make it as easy as possible, right? Super, super easy. And then just focus on establishing the habit. From there, you can begin to expand. So that's what I've really been digging into lately, and it's been hugely successful.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's been working out really well. Let's talk a little bit more about the music, and we talked a little bit before this, and we talked about like the role of a musician and the responsibility that you have for the type of music that you put out and how it affects people that listen to your music. So one thing I love about your music is that's inspirational and motivating, and so I think there's one of the artists that I'm attracted to is like Kanye West, because I've always felt like his music had a message that was bigger than just driving fancy cars and picking up chicks kind of thing, right? So and I feel like you have that same like message within your music, and I think there needs to be more of that out there. It's like people are awakening. And they're thirsty for more education, and that education with regards to spiritual growth, personal development, can come in all kinds of forms. And one of the ones that you've been working on for a long time is music. What is it? What's the term you coin your music? I know you had a term before.
I coin it, and I don't really know how to describe it. I know that's so cliche for artists to say. I'm like, oh, it's so unique, but I'd say it's like psychedelic rock meets like spiritual hip hop. It's like
spiritual hip hop. That was the one I think you used.
Yeah, I've never really I definitely consider myself a rapper, but when you hear the term rapper, it doesn't really embody my music in a way, even though like it's more like poetry wrapped. It's like,
yeah, right. I love it.
But I try to have like truthful lyrics, and the music is a vehicle to experience a transcendent kind of experience. Essentially, it's like you listen to it and you feel kind of transported, and the lyrics are insightful in a way that they provoke a new perspective, and it goes along the lines too of like in alignment with an awakening, where it's like you're overcoming corruption or personal obstacles, or you're like finding your own truth, and then ultimately you're getting to a better place. Sorry for being so vague, but
no.
I try not to, it's not just strictly like positive music in a sense. Like I do have some really inspirational songs, but I do have ones that are kind of edgier and grittier and confrontational, where it's like you're going through those obstacles. So it's like I try to be like true to the art, and like with trying to be inspirational in the end result, where it's like in alignment with the awakening that's happening.
Yeah. What do you think the challenges are for a musician to get their music heard these days?
Yeah, I remember your other point you said too. It's like what I wanted to talk about really quick is like the challenges of once the art is completed. Like even my book that I wrote, the sci-fi book, I started that 10 years ago. And if I would have released it 10 years ago, like the information would have been, really like innovative and groundbreaking. And it's still, a great book, but it's like information has accelerated so fast with like what's going on. And like, everyone, in LA, people talk about aliens and chakras and, the fifth dimension. Like if you say that on a sidewalk, you won't really get looked at weirdly here. It's like, that's what's cool about Venice Beach where I live. But yeah, it's such a challenge in itself once the art is out, because my tendency is to like, once I'm completed a project, to start on a new one. But there's like a vital phase that takes a lot of courage and even vulnerability, that once the book is out or the album's done, to promote it, because then you're like releasing it to the public and it's in their hands and it's open to like criticism, and that's something you kind of have to detach from to an extent and keep pushing it out, especially if you believe in the merit and the validity of the message, which ultimately has a purpose to like improve, humanity's lot. So it's like, as an artist, we're so like identified with our art where it becomes hurtful if someone reacts to it negatively. But it's like, you really have to get beyond that, because it's like, you're the vehicle to push this art. And it's like, if you don't do it, the art's going to like die in a corner, So it's like, it can grow and be heard and really help people. And it could have a tremendous impact, or it could do the latter. And it's up to that individual person where the art was channeled through. So, yeah, to answer your question, the challenges of musicians is just finding ways, networking, and, do little things like posting on social media, when concerts open up, get a live show going on. Just, keep reaching out, make it a daily habit to like try to reach out in any minor way, because the act of doing that, builds connections, and you never know what path can be created that will ultimately get your art heard on a grander scale.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that, and I also like what you touched upon here, which was like you have to have a plan for success, right? And that's like I think one of the key elements I missed in my life was, I missed it a few times. The first time I missed it was when I had just bought into Treehouse, and I busted my ass for about 3 years, and I doubled the sales in 3 years because I just like worked like tirelessly. And then all of a sudden I was like, I was making good money, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. Success is here. And then I went and decided I was going to golf 70 rounds a year kind of thing. And then like my business just fell apart. Right. And in a very short period of time, I was back promoting on the street again, trying to get people in the bar. And so I didn't have a plan for what would I do when the money started coming in. Right. And, the subconscious plan that I had was, I could relax, but that was not it. Like, I needed to actually start working harder to implement the system so that I eventually could pull myself away. The other place I screwed up with not planning for success was with weight loss. I made a goal about 7-8 years ago. I'm like, I want to get down to like 10% body fat. I want to be ripped. And so that looked like, I think I weighed 195 at the time. And for me to get to 10% body fat, I had to weigh like 175, which is like, I was already in pretty good shape at 195. And to be 175, it was like, I was really, really lean, like so lean that people were like saying to me, like you should go fucking eat, like, so like, cause they're not used to seeing someone that lean. And, but my goal was to reach 175. I literally hit it, stepped on the scale 175, and continue. And then from that point forward, gained all the weight back over the course of the next like 7 years kind of thing. Right. So there was no plan for success. I was just so obsessed with the goal that I forgot to say, well, what happens when I reach the goal? Right. So I think that's a real important takeaway here from this conversation is, it's like, yeah, we got to have the idea first and foremost. The second thing is we got to execute the idea, which is pretty much 90% of the effort, right? The idea is 10%. Execution of the idea is 10%, or of 10%. But then the execution also leads into, once the idea is complete, the execution continues, and it's just like, it doesn't stop once you reach your goal, right? You can take a moment, I think, to sit on the top of the mountain and be like, oh my God, look at this, I reached the goal, and soak it all in and take a picture for Instagram or whatever it may be. But then it's like, okay, well, now how am I going to maintain this? Or how am I going to promote this? How am I going to move to the next step? And I think that's a lot of people just are missing that. I know, I mean, I'm not judging. I'm saying that's what I did. Like, I'm speaking from experience here. That was just something that I missed. So, already with the book I'm writing now, I'm like, okay, well, what's going to happen when this thing's done? Right? What am I going to do? Right? And it's like, so now I'm like, my wife's going to illustrate it. Who's going to print it? These are the things. So it's like that 5 minutes a day that I'm putting into my book, I'm just going to transfer into 5 minutes of getting it illustrated, 5 minutes of getting it printed, 5 minutes of learning how to sell it on Amazon. I don't know what's going to happen. Right? So there's just a bunch of that is going to be unpacked, but the key is to keep that consistency going. And I think you're starting to tune into that as well. I mean, that's what it feels like. It's we need to have a plan for what happens after we reach our goal.
Totally.
Yeah, right on.
There's so much inner fire generated during the buildup of the project. Like when you're creatively working on it, it's so exciting, and you're like, wow. And yeah, then when it's out, and you're at this apex. You're like, what do I do?
Yeah, and then the other thing that starts happening when it's out is, it's one thing to sit and write a book. Let's just using the example of writing a book. It's one thing to sit and write a book in the privacy of your own home where no one's reading it. It's another thing to have a book printed and you're handing it to someone. And it's like all the fear of judgment, the fear of failure, the fear of it not being successful. All that starts to come up, and we start to create excuses as to why we're not going to promote it, or why we're not going to keep pushing it, or whatever it may be, or why we're going to start writing the next book. Yeah, you got to tune into all that and learn to let that go, to be able to push past those limitations that our mind creates for us.
Right. And that's one thing about artists too. It's like they could almost in a way use their creativity to hide behind it, because it's like there comes a point where when the book's out, it's like you need the persistent courage to like keep getting it out there and find ways. And that takes a whole new skill set. And it's like phase 2 of the operation.
Yeah, definitely.
To share it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people too probably get hung up in the elements of it. Like creating music is a ton of fun, I'm guessing. Right. But then promoting music may not be as fun. That's like, there's no more creation, but you could use the same creativity and apply it to, getting your music heard by, all kinds of people. And I did that actually with a client of mine. And he was able to, he actually started a coaching business to help people produce music, which is like this really cool thing. But like we came up with using creativity, thinking outside the box, connecting to the present moment of ways to get his music heard that I don't think anyone's doing, So like for me, that's what I always try and connect to. I want to be doing what no one else is doing, right? I think you're kind of there too. It's like you were way ahead of the curve with spiritual hip hop. There was like no one was really. No, I don't know anyone at the time. You're more connected to the industry, but I think you were the only one that was doing that, especially 10 years ago or however long that was, right?
Yeah, it's like it's not to say it's been an uphill battle, but a lot of people don't get it. Like some people, they really click with it. They're like, holy shit, what is this stuff? And they'll listen to it front to back. It's either that response or kind of like they don't understand it. But yeah, it's all good. It's the price to be to push something out that's creative and new. Yeah,
100%. What about like I guess we kind of touched on this already, but like you're like obviously you're now an adult, you have bills to pay and whatever else, and you're living in LA, which is not the cheapest place in the world to live, right? So how do you mix staying creative with like a regular adult life?
That was an obstacle in itself, actually a huge one, because I came here and I started doing like security work, and I was like, a supervisor at one point, but I wasn't making a whole lot of money. So I had to work, 60 hours a week, which is like a lot. And it's like, I kept remembering how valuable time is, like where it's like, oh my God, if I just had time, I could get my damn album out. And like the album took 7 years to make, because it's like, I'd work so much. And then and then I was in LA and there was a huge temptation to explore it, let's go to Santa Monica, let's go to Malibu, let's go to Joshua Tree. And, yeah, it is just, yeah, because LA is a grind. Like it actually is. Like, a lot of people think the LA experience is just going to the beach. Like everyone I know here is working so hard to survive just to live here. And then we get these pockets of time where you get to go to the beach, and then you're like, whoa, I'm in LA. Or you're driving in like the city and you see these like lowriders blasting like Tupac. And then you're like, whoa, I'm in LA. This is real. But it's like the rest of the time you're just working your ass off. But yeah, with those pockets of time you do have, it's like, that's when I tried to like engage in my art and get, and thank God it's like finally out. But yeah, that was an obstacle in itself. Just like being in an environment where there's so much opportunities, like, cause you can run into publishers or celebrities or like the other day I met Bone Thugs and Harmony and like their manager, and like, it's just little things like that. That's what's cool about LA. But like, yeah, despite all the working, like there is opportunity here, and yeah, I don't know.
I think that's good. One of the things that I feel like you're like connected to is like you're still like you still feel like a very youthful person, and I feel like I have that a little bit as well. Like I'm 42 and I don't even remotely feel 42. I feel like I'm 20 still. And it's like crazy to me kind of to see where my life is at. I got a 2-year-old kid and married and houseboat, the whole thing, right? And I'm like, wow, this is nuts what I was able to accomplish in a 20-year period. And now with the knowledge I have going forward, the next 20 years are going to be, I'm assuming 100 times better than my first 20 years, right? When I'm saying 20 from, I'm not really counting 0 to 20. I'm saying from 20 to 40, I was able to really do a lot, because from 0 to 20, you're still in school, kind of thing. But you've been able to like kind of like remain youthful. Like, what are some of your some key points to remaining youthful?
What I've noticed in my life is there was like a turning point where I'd see, growing up, that people would become adults and they would be more serious and grave and burdened with responsibility. Like I think I've maintained that for sure. And the secret is to like always, try to keep your innocence. If you're going through, shit and issues, try to heal from them, find avenues to like overcome that stuff, like traumas. Always highly value creativity, and keep that channel open, find ways to be creative, whether it's like gardening or cooking or trying something new or talking to a new group of people, like and then having like a spiritual connection is huge, because it's like if we're just consumed by the material world and humanity, it's like it's just kind of repetitive and mundane. But it's like, the spiritual world is like, it keeps you youthful, and it keeps you alive, and it keeps the inspiration going, where you could be a creator within the structure of the matrix.
Yeah. I mean, I love that, man. Like, I think you hit the nail on the head of like, what the key points are to remaining youthful. And I think the biggest one is having this spiritual connection, and like I say, people are waking up to the idea of a spiritual connection. It's happening more and more, where people are, they're starting to realize that they are not their minds and they are not their bodies, and there's something greater than that. And once you really start to know that, you really want to start connecting to your higher self or your true self. And then, like for me, it's by getting connected to who I truly am, not who I had been created because of all of the emotional trauma that I went through and the patterns that I created to protect myself from ever feeling that emotional trauma. I had gotten so far removed from who I truly was that I couldn't even recognize my true self if I was standing right in front of them, right? So you mentioned in there like healing from trauma and stuff. Like obviously this is what I teach, is like the letting go technique, and how to identify past traumas and how to break free from them. What is your experience on how to heal from things that came up in your past, that you've experienced in your past?
My main technique, like I went, when I was in India, I actually went to Osho's commune, that like controversial figure, but it was super awesome, his techniques. He borrowed a lot from like Western therapy, where it was like emotional release techniques. So like, say if something happens that's traumatic, they had these like meditations where you would tap into that emotion and try to like feel it, which could produce like, you might cry, or you might, experience anger, but tapping into it, because it's very common, even for me to an extent, to just, keep moving forward tough, especially, growing up an athlete. It's like, you get hit, you get back up and don't think about it. But there comes a time where shit just keeps piling up, where it's like you start to close off. And, then you're just kind of not, you can't really express your gifts fully to the world when you're walking around with a shell and you're apathetic. And then that's when, drugs and alcohol might, come involved, or binge eating, or all these like weird, subversive behaviors. But yeah, just keeping yourself open. And, honestly, a lot of issues could be dealt with just being proactive. Say if someone caused you a problem, with like dealing with that person, and being more assertive. And but yeah, if something does traumatic happen, just like I usually default to those techniques I learned that were like emotional release therapy.
Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, you basically described the letting go technique, which is what I'm really connected to, which is essentially allowing yourself to tune into the emotions you've been avoiding feeling your entire life, right? So the interesting thing that you mentioned there, I think, is that so many people have become so good at not feeling, right? Not feeling emotions. So we become numb. The problem being is that when we become numb to the bad, we also become numb to the good. And we don't start allowing those advanced states of consciousness to flow into our lives, because we've just been blocking so much, we just don't want to feel anything. And we develop all kinds of tools to make sure we don't feel, and then the only time we ever are really connecting to feelings and our true selves and higher states of consciousness is when we're using drugs or alcohol or whatever that may be to achieve those states. But I think you understand that too, that those states are achievable without the use of drugs or alcohol. You can experience the feeling of euphoria without ever taking a drink of alcohol or doing mushrooms or whatever the hell that may be. And so, that's ultimately the states of enlightenment, is when you're really fully, truly connected to the present moment. So yeah, man, that's interesting that you and I have kind of gone down the same path with that, and a big thing that I've been talking to with my clients lately is that so many of us want to talk about how to become free of this stuff, and we want to learn about it, but very few of us want to actually do the work, which is sitting in a meditation and connecting, going back to that time when you were 5 years old and your mother or father told you were worthless or whatever they might have told you, and like allowing yourself to connect to those emotions, because the ego, the mind just doesn't want to allow you to go back there because it was so painful, right? But that's the work that we have to do to break free from whatever it is that's holding us back today, kind of thing, right? So I think probably one of the ways that you've been able to achieve what you've been able to achieve is because you did that inner work, right? And you recognize those patterns, whether it was consciously or subconsciously, and you're like, oh, now that I've healed from this, I can write a book, or now that I've healed from this, I can go move to LA, I can do whatever it may be. So yeah, really good stuff. What about like the transition from Canada to America? You're Canadian, grew up in Amherstburg here. And then, one day you said you felt this calling, which is kind of interesting that you said that, because I always kind of felt the calling to go to the States as well. I remember when I used to only date American girls back in the day, because I was like, oh, I'm going to get my green card and move to the States, but it was always based on this belief for me that there was just so much more opportunity in the States, and maybe there is, I don't know, but that was something I let go and said I can make my own opportunity here. But there's definitely is like a drawing to there. So like, how did you go about moving to the States? How did it come about? How have you been able to stay? Like, what's the process there?
I think it was by like random chance in a way, or maybe the stars aligned. The girlfriend that I had 10 years ago, who I eventually married, she was American, and we were in love at the time, and it was like this crossroads where it's like, okay, my student visa is expiring, I have to move back to the States, what do we do? It was like the craziest story. I like packed up my car full of everything. Like, I had utensils and kitchen stuff and all my clothes. And I had resumes printed out. And it was so like, just like, like like an amateur thing to do where it's like, you're young, I just like, they're like, you're trying to live here. And they're like, why do you have all your stuff? And they like, and then I was like, no, I'm not. They're like, you have resumes printed up. And this was like before it got too like strict at the border. And then they sent me back. I tried to do it a second time, which is crazy. And then they were going to like ban me.
Oh, shit.
And then, yeah, I don't know. It was a wild story. Basically in the end result, we ended up getting married in the States, and we're no longer together now, which is a whole nother issue, that I had to like overcome and deal with, because that's like pretty intense, a divorce. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like I moved to California, and it's been radically different. It suits my personality more. Like I live in Venice Beach, and it's just very like open and free spirited. Like I'm still blown away by like, the way how I talk, which might seem weird to some, other parts of the land. But like here, it's just like normal. It's so strange.
Yeah. I've been out to LA several times. My cousin was a dancer, and she lived out there. She was doing all kinds of like TV appearances and commercials and stuff. And so I would go out there with my friends, and we would go hang out. And I was always, loved the California lifestyle, and the beaches. But there was a lot of downsides too, which was like the pollution and the traffic was just like intense. And that's the one thing I noticed a lot about going to the States, is that there's just so many people. Like so many people. Like I go to Florida a lot, and it's like in Florida, it's like if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you could be in traffic for like an hour and a half to go to the grocery store. So and LA is like very similar to that, right? It's like the traffic is so intense out there. So how have you adjusted to that lifestyle? And it's like, what are the pros, what are the cons to LA versus Canada, I guess?
Yeah, totally. Well, like the cons, and I've been here 9 years, so I can, speak on this with like a degree of expertise, I guess. It lacks an intimate community here, where it's like you can have a lot of friends, but like there's so many people. And I think it's just as a result, as it's too like overpopulated, where everyone's so busy trying to survive and do their own thing. You'll get fleeting moments of connection, but it's like, say in smaller environments or smaller towns, you'll get like a true community. And that's so powerful when it's like people bind together. Whereas here, it's like people are sociable but fragmented, where they're off like doing their own thing, and you might cross paths, and you might be lucky to get some like real close friends here, which is like awesome. But it's like it's funny, it's actually so many people, but I don't see too many people here with like long-term relationships. Like if you date anyone over a month in LA, it's like a huge like oh my god, how'd you pull that off? Just because it's like so many people and the attention is so scattered. It's just like the traffic is like terrible. I guess you get used to it. You try to listen to podcasts in the car, but yeah, that's not fun. But yeah, there's rewards. I guess it's like, there's an energy here that's like unique. Like the beach is like uber relaxing, but it's like, I live near Gold's Gym too, which was like, I think that's just to talk about fitness too, which was a big part of my, lifestyle here. I wrote a fitness book too on how to get shredded, basically, to lose body fat. Cause I did some competitions and I got second place in one at Muscle Beach, the one in Venice. But it's just little things like that, like which keep the life energy here going, like the beach or going to Gold's Gym. And it's like seeing Arnold Schwarzenegger, like at the machine next to you, you're like, holy shit. And other things too, there's so many diverse parts to LA. Like you can go in the city and then you get that kind of like city experience that you see in those like 90s hip hop movies, where it's like they're blasting the West Side Connection or something. You're like, this is actually where I'm at right now. It's cool to be here, and it's just, you kind of gotta like make it so you could stay here in a way. But there's definitely pros and cons, as in most areas.
Yeah, the big one though is weather though.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, that's like a default. Yeah, right now 80 degrees.
It can't be nice.
We're so used to it.
Oh my God. Like, it was on Sunday here. So 2 days ago, it was like the first kind of like nice day. And like, literally it was like, people just came out of the woodwork. It was like the parks were packed. The Ganacho Trail was packed. People, it's like, we as Canadians, especially with all this COVID BS going on, we have been like trapped in our houses because we're cold and we're used to that in the winter. But it's like on top of being locked down and not being able to go to a restaurant, not being able to, visit friends and family and whatever it may be, which I don't really think very many people are abiding by. But regardless, there is still this thing that's hanging over our head that we're supposed to be locked down. And then it's like, then the weather sucks. And it's like, oh man, but at least in LA, you got the weather, right? So where are you guys at right now with regards to lockdowns, case counts, what's happening in California?
They tell us to wear masks outside. Most people do. And then you wear them inside, but everything's open now. Like just recently, like restaurants are open again, which is awesome. Gyms are open, which is great. Even yoga. It's funny. They have hot yoga, which is like where it's 100 degrees in there. And it's like people are wearing masks. I'm like,
oh, really?
Crazy.
Oh, God.
But yeah, people, there's freedom of movement. And it's just wild to see how every city is different in their policies. Like in Florida and Texas, people are not even wearing masks at all and living their lives normal. And then, over here, it's like, it's still like a mind trip, but because I don't, subscribe to that whole ideology that they're promoting on the media. It's like, I'll walk outside without a mask. And then I see someone with a mask and they like kind of like move away from me. They're kind of just like, I'm like, okay, dude, like chill out.
Yeah. And I think it kind of comes along with spiritual growth work is that, when you drop the fear, right? And one of the big fears you have to drop as a spiritual student is the fear of death, right? And when you drop the fear of death and you come to the realization that everything's going to be okay, no matter what, even if you die, then you just don't buy into the BS. You don't buy into it. And I'm not saying that COVID isn't real or any of that, but I'm not going to allow fear to dictate my life, and that's the way I feel about it. And, if I get COVID and die, then that's what was meant to happen, so that's the kind of the way I feel. And I'm not going to buy into the narrative that we all have to stay in and lock down. Now, obviously, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I'm going to follow the rules, but I'm just not gonna live my life in fear. Essentially, is the way I feel. It's because I've dropped all fear. Like, I have no fear of anything I feel anymore. Whereas before the work that I did, I was fearful of everything. So I think you can see it. You can see it. You see it in the person that does a little circle around you as you walk outside. They got their mask on. It's like they're just consumed by the fear. Right. So one of the things that you have to do as a student of spirituality is you have to learn how to transcend that limitation of the mind, and it's difficult to do. I get it. I understand, people are numb and they don't know how to feel. And so how do you tune into fear if you don't even know how to feel anything, So it's interesting to see what's happening in Texas and Florida. And I made a post on my Facebook the other day that who would have thought that Florida would have had it right this whole entire time. And a good buddy of mine that I sail with, this guy Len, who is like, I call him CNN Len because he loves CNN, and him and I got this back and forth, and he's showing me articles and I'm showing him articles, but I'm like, ultimately we're divided on the issue. And the thing I think that's really good about that friendship is that we're on completely opposite ends of the spectrum, but we both still love and respect each other, so we can have a conversation about it, and we're not just gonna write each other off because we have different points of view. But ultimately, I think what happened in Florida was, they basically never shut down. And it's kind of ironic because I was in Florida when the pandemic was at its peak, when it just began a year ago. And like our friends and family were calling us and saying, you got to come home, get back to Canada. And everyone was freaking out. And I was like, I think we're in the perfect place. I was actually saying we should just stay here. But then ultimately we ended up succumbing to the fear. And, and we got in the car and we freaking drove home. And now looking back, like Florida basically only closed for about like 2 or 3 weeks. And then they were just right back to open. And, now Florida with 24 million people that has basically no mask mandates at all. They're completely 100% wide open. They have fewer cases than Ontario does. And Ontario has 15 million people, So yeah, they have more deaths, but they just had their deaths quicker, and that's ultimately what's happening is like, I said this in a podcast, is like, you cannot prevent the spread of coronavirus. You can slow it down, but you can't prevent it. Ultimately, everyone is going to end up getting this thing in some way, shape, or form, right? So we will end up having just as many deaths as Florida relative to our population, right? It's just going to take us longer. So Florida did it in 3 weeks. We're doing it in 3 years. So that's the state of Ontario and what we're going to be doing. I don't know, like what, if you have any insights on what do you think is happening here?
Yeah, just like one notable point is just it's impossible to ultimately restrict humans from nature because we're all intrinsically connected. Like it's such a power move on their part, it's go indoors. It's so crazy. Like what it was kind of cool when COVID came here and it was like the lockdown and it was like, it's nuts. You're like, oh my God, lockdown. But I saw this girl on Instagram and she was like using that time to go out and on all these road trips. And she was going to these like forests and parks. And then I sprung the idea. I'm like, this is the perfect time to do this. So like I went to like, with my girlfriend, I went to Mount Shasta, which is like this, it's considered like the first chakra of the earth, this huge mountains and awesome, spiritual sojourn. So we drove there like 10 hours. The roads were like clear. And then it was funny when you drove out of LA, no one was wearing masks, like where it was like the influence of like them wasn't there. They're like, yeah, we don't wear masks up here. And it was so refreshing because you like, and it's so easy to adapt to that subculture where it's like, yeah, we don't wear masks here. Everything's fine. And then you go into this subculture where it's like, it's more fear-laced and it's like, what are you doing? Wear a mask. We need to protect each other. But then you go outside that and like, just like when those riots happened, COVID disappeared and it's like, well, I guess no one has COVID anymore. But then they ushered that back in the media shortly after. And it's like, you need to be afraid of COVID again. Yeah. And it's just because it's a constant projection from the mainstream media that it's actually in your head. Like if no one talked about it for a month, like, I don't think anyone would care, because it's really not that serious, not to like minimize, the people it has affected severely, but it's really not that serious compared to other, like fatal diseases, and cancer and cigarettes and drunk driving and, a host of other, the flu, like. Yeah,
exactly. And it's like, and you said it, it's like what you hold in mind tends to manifest. So if you're holding in mind that there's a disease out there that's coming to get you, then guess what? It probably is. If you hold in mind that, you have no fear and there's nothing to worry about, then you're probably going to be fine, and that's ultimately what it is. And I, in the beginning, I think I agreed with the lockdowns. Is like we didn't know what this thing was, and it was like, hey, we don't know what's going on here. Like let's close this, let's shut everyone down just to see what it is. But then after a month or two, and we realized like, hey, the death rate is nowhere near what we thought it was going to be. Like they were originally saying it's going to be like 7 to 10% death rate of the population, and it's like now it's like, well, no, it's not even close to that. It's barely even 1%. So it's like, okay, well, now let's relook at the facts. But what happened there is I think people got so connected to their position on it, and they now refuse to let go of their position, which is a spiritual technique in itself, which is like letting go of all positions. I often tell the story about I'm vegetarian, and I used to hold the position of being a vegetarian like really, really strongly, and because of that, I got a lot of pushback from other people. And then when I let go of my position of vegetarianism, even though I was still veg, I wasn't connected to the position anymore, right? Then I started getting a lot more people asking me about why I was vegetarian, and they were actually asking because they wanted to know like what benefits I received from it and that kind of thing. So yeah, we got to learn to let go of the positionality, but unfortunately, I think we're a ways away. Ontario and California might as well be the same politically, in some ways, right? I mean, it sounds like California is a little bit more open than we are even now. But we're going to face the same challenges, and those challenges they're getting a little bit more concerning with regards to vaccine passports and all these kind of things. Like there's a good chance that I may never be able to leave this country ever again. And I'm okay with that. It's like if that's what is supposed to happen, then that's what's supposed to happen. Like I'll let go of the outcome. But there will come a point in time, I think, where people will say like, "Hey, this is unjust, and something's got to change." And it may take, unfortunately, 5 years, 10 years before those changes happen.
Yeah, that's why I just feel a sense of urgency more so now than ever, that everyone to play their unique part in expressing whatever they need to say, whether it's on, social media or having collective efforts to take action, out in public, or, me as speaking for myself as an artist, like this is the time to get my art out and do what I can do to enact change. Cause like I see what's going on too. And it's like they do it in doses. It's like, the frog in hot water where they raise the temperature up a little at a time before the frog's dead because the water's too hot. Yeah. Like the restrictions are getting more incrementally severe as we go on. And it's like you said, we haven't adapted to the data, where it's like, okay, maybe we should be less restrictive, but it's like, no, they keep making it more serious. So it's like, there has to definitely be a counter movement, which will ultimately fight for our liberation and freedom of movement. Cause I think everybody, especially those who don't want to be vaccinated, it's like, we want to travel, we want to, it's insane. It's like forcing those like restrictions on people. Yeah.
And, the whole vaccination argument, a whole entire another conversation. And I don't even know if we need to go into that right now, but I think we kind of made our points with regards to what's happening with regards to the pandemic. Because you start talking vaccines and people start going crazy. I just read an article in Forbes magazine that 78% of Canadians agree with a vaccine passport, which is like shocking, but I believe my prediction is, and I'm pulling this from Andrew, my business partner, is that this thing will be over in 2022, and that's because that's when Bill Gates decided it would be over. So, like Bill Gates has got all this power, and he said that it's probably going to take till 2022 for us to get out of this. And my guess is in 2022, will we have some sort of return to normalcy now? Will that be with a vaccine passport or not? I'm not 100% sure, but we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll mark this podcast as my prediction, and we'll see where we're at in 2022. Let's talk a little bit, and I want to talk about this like kind of selfishly, because I'm in this process now of changing my diet around. Not that I'm not going veg, but I've shifted to like a high protein diet where I'm like consuming like way more calories. The way I lost my weight the first time was through like dramatic calorie restriction, like dramatic. Like I was insane. I wasn't eating healthy food, but I was restricting my calories. Like I was using my Fitness Pal, and I like literally never missed. Like I was so strict. And here's the thing: if you're listening to this podcast, if you decide to use my Fitness Pal, what I found from my own personal experience is you only get one shot at it. Meaning, you can do it and enter your food. The second you don't do it anymore, you'll never go back to the same level of commitment that you had. Because I've tried to reuse my Fitness Pal multiple times ever since my first kind of run, which was like a good 6-month run where every day I entered every single thing that I ate, right? Ever since then, I've never been able to recapture that same commitment to entering all of my food, right? So that's just my own personal experience. Maybe it's not for everybody else. But now I've shifted to this high protein kind of diet that my buddy Tony Smith that owns Garage Gym out there kind of got me onto. So I'm eating high plant-based proteins. It seems to be working pretty good. I mean, I'm losing weight, feeling pretty good. I feel like my cravings are lower. I'm not hungry. I'm eating more. I'm not starving like I was before. So like, what's your experience with getting lean, getting trim? Any tips, trips, ticks, or trips, or wow, tricks or tips that you might have for people?
My go-to thing, and I discovered this, it's really trending now, but as intermittent fasting. And that's another kind of reason why I've kind of maintained a youthful look. Like I basically bypass breakfast. I don't usually eat till anywhere from 11, 12, but I don't push it too much because then if I wait too long, then the temptation to eat a lot will like emerge.
Right.
But yeah, intermittent fasting, I'll usually eat within an 8-hour window. So say 10 to 6. And then you have all that time off from eating to like, digest and remove toxins. And you get used to it really quick. I've been doing it for like 4 years now. And it's like, you can eat even over a lot, your calories that you burn and still keep relatively thin. But no, the high protein, you that's always a winner. It's just it's like, for me, it's being real with myself. Like I have a pretty nasty sugar addiction. I'm an addict, so it's like one of my things was like alcohol and stimulants, and like my new thing is like sugar, and it's like, It's always been there and I love it. So like I've kind of gravitated towards the ketogenic diet because it removes sugar completely, because I'm like irresponsible when I have donuts in front of my face. But yeah, like I like keto because you get to have savory foods. You could have like cheese and bacon, for instance. But if if you want healthier options, there's like salmon, or you can have coconut oil or extra virgin olive oil and big salads, a lot of greens. And then you could still have berries. But other than that, it's like trying to eat foods that are satiating. Like say if you do eat carbs, have like oatmeal or like sweet potatoes, and try to eat healthier early on in the day. Like if you start off with like junk food, then that pattern is probably going to like repeat throughout the whole day. It's just like if you don't fill in the MyFitnessPal, like if you can at least start 1-2 meals healthy, then you just have to tough out that like third meal. And then, then if you can like discipline yourself to eat like, a salmon salad and have like a protein smoothie for dessert, which is pretty damn tasty. And it's almost like you're eating sugar. Then you could go to bed and, continue on the path of weight loss. There's all these like little hacks like that you can do. It's like you can use protein powders to sweeten up like, your oatmeal, or even eat like eggs mixed with protein powder, and it's like chocolate, like pancakes or something. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff, but
yeah, right. Yeah. And that's what I've been finding is like, I've been finding some like hacks on like things that I can eat that are high protein, lower calories. Right. So, and like, if you want to get like a bunch of protein and fill yourself up, you can eat a fucking giant plate of broccoli. Right.
Right.
And it's like, it's like the size of your freaking head, and you'll feel completely full, and you're never going to gain weight eating that kind of thing. So yeah, I've been kind of on this path, and I similar to you, I kind of went from the addiction of alcohol to pop, then it was to diet pop, then it was to sugar, and it's been this like long road, but yeah, I'm starting to feel like I got a handle on it. And one of the things that I tuned into that helped me break free from that as well was, starting to ask myself, why am I going to the fridge right now? Like what's going on here? Like, what am I feeling? And I remember this moment. I told all my clients about this and my groups, and I was like, I recognized that I wanted to drink pop, and that pop is my killer, right? And I'm off it now, but it's like one of the things that I connected it to a lot of like my happiness as a kid. And so I wanted to drink pop. I had been off like for like 3 weeks, and the cravings were so intense, which was crazy. After 3 weeks of being off, you think I would be free of it. And so then it came to my awareness that I could just tune into what it was that I was feeling. Why did I want to go and drink a pop? And I made a list of like 5 or 6 things, right? And it was because I was feeling pressure. I had this real estate deal that I was telling you about. It was in the works, and I don't know if it was going to work out. And I was launching a coaching program that wasn't getting great traction, and self-doubt was coming up. I was hungry. I was actually physically hungry. And I wrote all these things, and I realized in that moment, I'm like, hey, I could just tune into every single one of these emotions and let them go. And then I can become free of my desire to drink pop. But it just seemed too difficult. So I just decided to drink a pop, and I cracked, and this was a while ago, right? But I brought clarity and awareness to why I was wanting to go there. And just by shining the light of awareness on it, I began starting to kind of take power over it. So the other thing that I'll throw in there is if anything is out of control in your life, is this, you just want to track it, you know, whether it's finances, drinking too much pop, eating too much sugar, whatever, eating too many calories, eating too many potato chips. You know, if you eat a bag of potato chips every day, then just mark it down. Oh, I ate a full bag. Oh, I only ate a half a bag. Oh, I ate 3/4 of a bag. And then eventually, just with that awareness, the habit will, I mean, you'll be able to break free from the behavior. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. So yeah, I mean, I've definitely had some success and some failures. I mean, I tried quitting pop probably 100 times. I'm on a good streak right now, so we'll see how long it lasts. But yeah, so anyways, let's transition, John, and just talk a little bit about what you're doing now and what you got coming out. I know you said you just finished up an album, and you sent me a song there. I haven't listened to it yet, but I definitely want to do that.
Yeah, my album, I got it here.
Oh, right on.
A Call to Awaken. And this is like this draw I illustrated. It's basically someone who's kind of submerged in the normal mundane reality. And then there's kind of like a higher calling from above, awakening him to a new reality.
Love that.
I wrote 40 songs for it and narrowed it down to like 12. And I mixed the album and, you know, got it all mastered and stuff. And I wrote the music for it. So that's available. And I have my sci-fi book printed up.
Nice.
It's called Mystic Emergency, and that took a long time to do. And then my fitness book. This is on how to get ripped.
Nice.
40 days of fitness.
Right on.
So I am releasing a Kickstarter campaign. It will be released through there. But if anyone wants to get any of those things, it's on my website, johncosmic.com. Yeah. So now I'm at the point. Like I'm doing real estate right now as like my career job here. And simultaneously, you know, I'm getting the art and everything I've created finally out. So those are my main two objectives. And, you know, trying to maintain a fitness lifestyle and continue my spiritual practice. And yeah. Yeah,
man. Right on. Yeah. Well, I think you provided a ton of value here today. And yeah, we should do like a yearly check-in and see where you're at and where both of us are at, kind of thing. On this path of, you know, enlightenment, fulfillment, impact, that kind of thing.
Awesome.
Yeah, right on, man. Thanks for coming on, and stick around because I want to tell you about my movie. But yeah, don't forget, if you haven't already, click that subscribe button and leave some comments below. And any questions you have for John, you can check him out at his website there, which is johncosmic.com, right? And yeah, check out his stuff, listen to his music. It's all really great stuff with a great message. So thanks for taking the time to listen, and we'll see you again next week.